was worried about that one more.
I really like that idea of still singing this tidal kind of like frustration.
Yeah, I'm kind of getting that kind of like explicitly this like dynamic.
Yeah, that kind of you can feel that there it is.
Do you want to reach out?
Oh yeah, we can get out.
Okay, thank you for staying, and thank you for joining us or rejoining. So we're gonna crack on. And continue with the second half, which we'll have three writers to read again, for each for about 10 to 15 minutes. And at the very end, I'll just announce a couple of things, and then that will be the end of things. So the next reader in line is Mark Lindsey, who was awarded his MA in Creative Writing from the University of Sheffield and is currently working on his first full collection of experimental hybrid poetry. His writing uses prose, poetry, poetic essays, and collage to explore issues of fiction and truth, politics, history, misogyny, psychology, and trauma. His research includes explorations of grief, the importance of the physical and its relation to truth in poetry and non-fiction, and use of erasure as a method of exposure in the works of contemporary women poets. His work has been published in Pamphlet Press magazine and Route 57, and Mark is a founder member of a Sheffield-based writers group called Cut Collective. He also has a very exciting project coming out in the near future, which he's not yet able to talk about. Just a little tease for you there. The second reader in line will be Ethel Mckellar, who is a Sheffield-based Zimbabwean writer and graduate of the University of Sheffield's MA Creative Writing program. Her writing has appeared in various anthologies and magazines, including Vasa Theory and several issues of the University of Sheffield's Creative Writing Journal, Route 57. The debut short story collection, Mushrooms for My Mother and Other Stories, made the 2020 S1 Leeds Literary Prize longlist. Her writing has also enjoyed some recognition elsewhere. Short story Sisters, for example, reached the finalist position in Myriad Editing's first drafts competition in 2018. And Flash essay Ubuntu, her Flash essay Ubuntu was runner-up in Sunspot Literary Journal's single word contest in 2020. Ethel started writing to keep a connection with the various places she calls home. Before that, she was a theatre artist who divided her time between the University of Zimbabwe's Alfred Byte Hall and the communities in and around Harare in Zimbabwe. Lately, Ethel has reconnected with her theatre roots, working on a participatory performance and research project for young people from communities where arts engagement is low. For her day job, Ethel is a link worker for a community organization that helps speakers of other languages to develop their functional English skills. She's also proudly the mother of two amazing young men. She loves laughing and loves dancing. We know both, I think. We've seen that and heard it. And when dancing, she laughs. I'm getting entangled in this sentence now. So she loves laughing and loves dancing, but loves dancing whilst laughing more. Yeah. And finally, we welcome Alison Moore, who is a PhD candidate at the University of Sheffield. writer's name is really cool, Agi Moore these days. Here at the University of Sheffield, researching the role of the archival drive and found materials in author interrogation of identity under my and Adam's supervision. Her work has been published in Route 57, in Dear Boa Journal and Black Box Manifold, and we are really proud to say that her debut pamphlet, Not the Archive, but there's a pun there, is published by the same press. And I don't know if you've got any copies here too. That would be lovely if we could see that. She's a founder member also of Cut Collective Writers with Mark. So warm welcome to the three of you.
Hello. This was meant to be a story. It got away and refused to begin, forced itself to become a what? Whatever this will become, start again, it insists. Again is continuity, again is keeping on. A thing already begun cannot begin again unless we agree as reader, agree as writer that it can, a consensus whether true or whether no. Different though, never the same, but still carrying on, still containing elements of earlier conception. Whatever it wants, that is out of its control, inevitable. Cross-pollination, contamination, or neither, or both. Less than either, more than nothing. Start, to come into existence, to begin, or to jump, be startled, react to a shock. Is there more honesty in violent initiation? To initiate the initiates bring shades of the cultish. Is this a beginning to be concealed, forbidden, unwitnessed? Does that hurt? Is it right to hide from what started this behind obfuscations? Why this story? Why did this one resist? I wanted to tell it so much. It denied the satisfaction of its taking shape. No, not satisfaction, perhaps comfort. Stories begin as comforts, oral blankets gifted us in toddlerhood, to build a cosy notion of a world somehow manageable, somehow benevolent. Whatever ills we run into, it all ends happily on the final page. I read to my daughter of owl babies alone against darkness, but Mother Owl returns on every reading. Father Bear brings starlight to fearful cub. Predators stripped of fang and talon sit awkwardly in an adult mind, but never tell her that, not at that age. Where does story end and lie begin? How do they overlap on the grand semantic Venn diagram? Are there moments where they fill the same circle? Does it matter? And if it does, when? Gentle, kind lies told to children as buffers from an indifferent world must carry some moral weight, but those lies also prepare them, soften them up for the predators they will meet. The authoritarians, the parasites presenting as self-purported protectors. What of the children whose Mother Owl never returns, no matter how they cry, whose father Bear left before birth? If there is solace in sharing a lie for those who stand outside, the comfort must seem thin. Is this why we cherish sad songs of failing love, find less comfort in songs of romantic success? Is the honesty of the jeopardy more nourishing for the soul? Do we reject the unsophisticated stories of love we were told in childhood for an adult love blended with pain? Do sweeter stories fail to hold up to the evidence of our messy lives? When lyricist Hal David created the song I Say a Little Prayer in 1967, he wrote in the voice of a woman anxious about her lover fighting in the Vietnam War, though this is never made explicit in the lyrics. The music was composed by David's partner, Burt Bacharach. The song was given to Dionne Warwick. With its peppy, jazzy arrangement and Warwick's sweet voice, the song became a hit, despite the fact that neither of its writers particularly liked it. There was no real sense in this recording of the anguish felt by the woman, nor of the dangers faced by her man at war. The effect is wistful, syrupy, though certainly not unpleasing. Whose song is this? Man writes, woman sings. Is this a song of female torment or a male's fantasy of such, an appealing notion to be loved so dearly? Is this an unjust condemnation of David's right to write in the voice of another? Or is this his co-option, his appropriation, his theft of perspective? Is it dishonest to cast writing as another, an attempt, however flawed, to see through another's eyes, as an act of empathy? Are we villains when we try? Does this negate the listener's sensitivity, tear away at the honest foundations of their sentiment? Is an emotion prompted by a fiction lesser, corrupted, invalid? A year later, a different version of the song was released as a B-side and would eventually eclipse its A-side. This version, recorded at the insistence of producer Jerry Wexler, came about when Aretha Franklin and her backing singers, the Sweet Inspirations, who had also performed on Warwick's recording, were messing around with the song during a break in the studio. Deep and slightly downbeat piano played by Franklin immediately alters the atmosphere, shedding the lightness in favour of a weightier grittiness, a serious tone that, despite the beautiful melody, roots the song, brings it down to earth, reflects not the kind of honeyed romanticism of shallow adolescent love, but rather a grown-up version tempered by street-level realities and by the persistent possibility of loss. Franklin's vocals, still as beautiful as Warwick's, are also more robust and forceful, yet still tender, still vulnerable. The vocal arrangements of the latter recording are far more complex than that of the earlier, with a troubling tension created by the interplay between Franklin's lead and her backing singers. There are moments, most notably when the title is sung, where Franklin switches places with the Inspirations. It's as though there are certain phrases that it's too painful for the lead to openly vocalize, perhaps as if Franklin realizes the futility of that prayer, that it is an act of nothingness, of no practical advantage whatever. The Inspirations become a chorus that encourages her to face the anguish, or could just as easily be taunting her with it. Though it too deals only obliquely with David's Vietnam theme, Franklin's recording gives a truly intricate sense of what it's like to live apart from a loved one, with the uncertainty of whether you'll be together, alive, again. Whose song is this? Its creators created for Warwick. Yet why, in Identical Tales, is Franklin's take somehow more real, more relevant? Both fictions, constructions, neither true, yet one truer. And why is it harder to pull away from the story that hurts the most? A different story. A boy around 10 on a Cornish beach, unsporty, overfed, and for once free of the scorn of peers, all left behind the day's drive north. Podge belly raw from the friction of sand and polystyrene, he thrills to the freedom of bodyboarding, giddy when flying, hysterical when thrown off, as his board skims on. A stranger, a woman, carrying her own battered board, sees his newer one slide by, drops hers, takes his. The sorry replacement is dragged back to his family. He seeks allies in his upset, ones who have the authority to right this injustice. But his father doesn't rise. His eye follows the boy's finger, but he's keen to remain unseen. Too many moments pass. Anger turns to confusion, turns to a new kind of emptiness. You can still use it, can't you? The father carries the scarred slab to the beach each remaining day of the holiday. The boy will not use it. This story ends, something other begins. Readers, make your assumptions now. Wonder whether the boy is the writer, whether the father is the father of the writer, whether the childhood is the childhood of the writer. Irresistible psychoanalytic lure, forensic dissection of the narrative to uncover the writer's true inner architecture. If this is proved a fiction, or even if not, where is the moral line? Is it right to allow the reader the pleasure of these connections? If this is proved true, or even if not, is this an act of exploitation? A father devil conjured, a second unacknowledged injustice lurking amid ascenders, descenders, bars and bowls. Where is the silver lining here? Whose might it be? Do the writer's manipulations leave the boy trapped in a moment of betrayal? Isn't this ending artifice? If this were proved real, lives would continue. The moment would have its legacy of hurt, of growth, of both. To take the yarn and spin it further would lead in time to a happier end, different yet no less artificial. Perhaps this needs an end heavy with pain to keep it authentic. If left happy, does it become a false solace against honesty? And if we stretch the story into the future, why not into the past? Why be so dismissive of the father's experience? Should we not try to understand why that character is unable to protect their child on this occasion? Does trauma underpin this too? Where should we focus our judge's lens? And if we judge the father wanting, cast him as villain, neglect to recognise his passivity as rooted in fear, who does that serve? Do we slam our gavels invoking a world where we foreground the values that suit us, choose who to absolve, who to condemn, decide who to punish, who to redeem? An unconscious impulse, maybe. Our invocation of a world created to show grievances as we perceive them, to right wrongs unresolvable in reality, to nudge others into accepting our views of what the world must mend. But in doing so, do we also open our wounds for others to see, for them to exploit? Thank you.
Okay. I mainly write about the experiences of African women at home and in the diaspora. So, without much further ado, there are two words that I will explain first. Gogo means grandma in many Southern African languages, and Esangoma is a traditional healer. So the story is called Gogo. Oh, and the other thing is I write prose, not not poetry. Okay, Gogo. She hesitates. Young people wait for their elders to start important conversations, not the other way around. It's only midday on an ordinary clear sky summer afternoon. The sun is gleaming with blinding ferocity, but it's dark inside Gogo's thatched, round mud kitchen hut, cool and shadowed. It's always dark in Gogo's kitchen. The only light is a sliver from a small triangular hole in the wall, not big enough to let the smoke out or to make the room lighter. She used to think that the room needed to be dark for Gogo's things. The drums behind the door, the masquerade dancer mask, and animal skin blankets on the floor next to the drums, and the rows of jars with roots, herbs, and other concoctions on a shelf. Gogo is a sangoma. She can speak to the ancestors and see the future. In Nomadlos's child's mind, talking to the ancestors could only be done in the dark. Nomadlosi wants to sit next to Gogo on the cool earth floor. Gogo works quietly and quickly. She sits on a reed mat next to the fire, shelling groundnuts. The thick black smoke doesn't seem to trouble her. Nomadlosi is ashamed that her own eyes water easily. She wants Gogo to rebuke her and say, "Hey, child of my child, do you want to spend the whole day standing out there in the sun doing nothing? Do you want to be like the dancer who learns the dance when the drummers have dispersed? Come in here and help me shell these groundnuts and learn to do something useful with your hands, you lazy girl." She wants Gogo to say it with the same faint exasperation that used to make her laugh until tears streamed down her cheeks. She would then be able to duck her head across the threshold. But Gogo keeps shelling the groundnuts. An earthenware pot sits simmering on the fire, being stewed. Nomadlos's stomach grumbles. Gogo keeps tending the fire, making sure the heat is just right, moving the logs apart when the pots start bubbling over. In the city, everyone has a stove with a dial with numbers that moderate the heat. She watches Gogo's hands hypnotize. Gogo works quietly and quickly. There is a lot to be done before the sun sets. She has no one left to help her with the chores. All her children and grandchildren have scattered across the world. Nomadlosi knows she has to say something now, explain herself, try to make Gogo understand why she has to leave too. Tell her that she is a one-way ticket. Once the shelling is done, Gogo adds more water to the bean pot and gathers all the shells off the floor, making everything neat again. Now, Nomadozi thinks, but she has hesitated too long. Gogo stands, picks up the water pot, and heads towards the door, brushing past Nomadozi, leaving a feeling inadequate and something else she can't quite describe. I'm just going to read the beginning of another story. This one is set in a township. I grew up in a township in Zimbabwe, a township of the high density suburbs where black people, that were built for black people during colonial times. So I grew up in a township. I have left my glasses in my bag. Sorry, I don't know why. So this one is called The Lizard. I wake up to a commotion outside on the street. I strain my ears and hold my breath. It is something I do very well. I usually listen for a few seconds, then jump up shouting, fight, or accident, or whatever I figure the noise to be. I'm usually right. Uncle and Ma do it too, but they don't jump up and bolt out of the door like they've been stung by a shongo. Uncle ambles out a little while after me, a frown of faint irritation on his face, looking like he's going to ask what all the fuss is about and tell everyone to go home or take their noise somewhere else, but he doesn't. To understand what the commotion is about quickly, you need to approach the heart of the racket the way Uncle does, deliberately, listening to what people around are saying and cautiously, in case you need to run away at short notice. But I hate missing the beginnings of things and then having to rely on other people to fill in the gaps. Other people always manage to make themselves part of the story. That's how adults retell what happened. They'll say, "Oh, I was just washing my husband's uniform. He's a soldier, as you know." Or I just sat down to eat my lunch. I was early today. I'm usually still cooking at this time. Sometimes they get so lost in their own story that I don't get to know what happened, because in their story, they might see a love rival in the crowd of people watching the action you missed and start to tell you about all the things she's been saying about them and how they're going to have it out with her in front of everyone one of these days. If you manage to steer them back toward what you want to know, then they just say, "Then I had the Santana arrive and went back to my laundry. Can you believe it? Those boys knocked my pail over. I'll have to have a word with their father. They should teach his children some manners instead of letting them run wild in the township. Why doesn't he have a wife anyway?" I would have to just stand there and listen, because you can't walk away when your elders are still talking. So, although I like gossip, I prefer to see events as they happen and listen to gossip when nothing else is happening. Ma comes out of the house last, always. She does so when she is sure that there are other women already there. She almost always has to rely on me to tell her what's happened. So all she gets is, "Some policemen came to arrest the rascals at number 1429. The rascals at number 1429 resisted arrest, and people booed and chased the police away. Then a Santana came with more policemen, and that's when you came out." She gets the abridged version all the time because she doesn't want people to think she's a gossip monger. So she nods too vigorously, saying, "Oh, oh, oh," so loud that I tell her the story in one breath. Commotions are not uncommon in the township. Also, our house is a T-junction house, directly in front of where two roads, the Bow Road and the gravel road with no name, come together. There's no sign saying our road is the Bow Road, but father says our road is says the papers that came with the house said our address is 1431 Libor Road. No one is sure where the plaque that stood. No one is sure where the plaque stood or whether there ever had been one. But the most accepted story and retold story is that somebody stole the plaque a few hours after it had been installed. So although no one has seen the sign or my father's or anybody else's papers, our road is called Libor Road and the gravel road has no name. I have even given our address to a pen pal in Czechoslovakia as 1431 Libor Road, Maqeda Township, Gweru, Zimbabwe, Africa, the world. The part of street directly in front of our house is the meeting place for people who live on the two streets. It is the arena for all the dramas that happen on the two roads. And sometimes commotion from nearby streets find their resolution in front of our house as well. This is how I've come to be an expert on the sounds of the street. Also, you just have to learn at an early age, because if, for example, your 14-year-old friends call you out to come and play pada or nodo, and they sound too nice, like they're pleading, then you know that if you go out, you have to be prepared to fight and not to play nodo or pada. It means that something has happened and you've lost a friend sometime between the last game the previous day and waking up in the morning. Otherwise, their normal call to play is impatient and full of threats to come out quickly or the game will start without you. Reading the noises of the street is a matter of life and death, my brother Chipua says. The hunter must identify with exactness the various sounds heard in the forest. In the 14 years I've been alive and lived on the street, I've almost become as good as my brother. I don't know if I'm a hunter, but I know that a single long piercing whistle from the back of the house just after supper seems to be my brother's call to go out hunting. I've never seen the whistler of this long piercing whistle, but I think whoever it is must have been a cattle header at some point in his life. I'll end that one there. And then this one is a new one, a newish one, which I'm still kind of working on. It's called Next Tuesday. There's nothing like walking through a cemetery on a drizzly morning. Here amongst the... Oh, one thing that I must tell you before I go on is I have a habit of writing words which I've never said in English. So some of them might sound different to what you think they should be. Just not than they should sound. So just, yeah, go with the flow and think about what the nearest approximation of what I'm intending to be. So next Tuesday. There's nothing like walking through a cemetery on a drizzly morning. Here amongst the crumbling gravestones, the moss-laden gargoyles, the weather-beaten angels, and the clumps of nettles, you realize that Grandma's ochre-mud hat with green and yellow chevrons hugging its brown belly where you were born is no longer home. Neither is the township where your parents' house sat on the edge of the westland that was once the white people's golf course where you grew up. Number 6, the Rembrandt on 5th Avenue, the first place you lived alone as an adult and bought your first piece of furniture, was never home anyway. The city was too big, too frenetic, and too prone to erupting and rejecting its own. Lost amongst the epitaphs of the city's greats from a bygone era, you begin to realize that home is here, in this city on Seven Hills, in the stirrings of an understanding of the thing called British humor or British banter, often so cutting and one-sided that should it offend, then you have a chip on your shoulder. This is home, where your answer to when are you fucking off home, wherever that is next Tuesday, always. Here amongst the nettles and the hollies, you accept that you can stop agonizing over which friend to ask to send your body back across the Atlantic. You can even see the epitaph. She tarries here, but her scarlet spirit forever wanders and searches. Thank you.
Hi. This pamphlet actually started life as an MA project. It was just about 12 poems then, so it's kind of doubled in size. And I'm really fortunate that Deborah Press has picked up on it. If I can just do a quick plug for their journal, which is an online journal, which is free to read. There's some really cool experimental work on there, so I would advise you to check it out if you fancy it. These poems were inspired by a bunch of family documents that I found that my mother was going to throw out, actually, and I managed to rescue. But also by Jacques Derrida's essay, Archive Fever, A Freudian Impression. So it's taken as its inspiration materials relating to my grandmother, my great-aunt, my great-grandmother, and my great-great-grandmother. What became apparent on looking at these documents was that even though they were, in theory, designed to document the lives of these women, they actually undocumented the women because of the male-dominated bureaucratic language and the archival conventions that we used. So this is kind of a response to that. I'm going to read about 10 of the poems. They're pretty short, actually. The first one is called Arca, which is a term that I borrowed from Derrida, which is what he translates from the Greek as meaning origin. So Arca, origin. Palimpsest of iron gall and nicotine, reclaimed rice paper legacy bonded with incrementally brittle tape. Amnesty of shredding discloses dad's side only. Ada's salvaged ID card uneasy among pallid fragments of Olive, Ivy, Olive, and Annie, logged in gauche sepia. Origination, devolution, conclusion. Plot secured in perpetuity. £7, 10 shillings. Birthday telegrams partially redacted. It's not personal. Your lot have already been consigned to landfill, but the past was taking up so much room and you could really use the space. Artifact or ego, hoard or dump, emotionality or practicality, hybrid or compromise, scan, digitize, catalogue souls, boxed, released to flat pack sanctuary, analog stasis solace, third floor down. Untitled, 1872 to 1912. Unpaid piecework packaged in inherited sheets. Scarlet forensics laundered to bleached terracotta. Number 364, Olive Girl. Schedule 1. Certified copy birth of child named in the subjoin. Rank or profession of father, springmaker. Required to be ascertained or proved for any purpose connected with the employment in labour. Capitalism's progeniture, rubber stamped transient identity. Number 34, Ivy, girl. Schedule, certified copy, entry of birth, rank or profession of father, engine fitter's labourer. Caught again at 40, hypertrophic scars retorn, praying for menostasis. Number 307, query, Olive, girl. Certificate of birth pursuant to the Births and Deaths Registration Acts, 1836 to 1874. Rank or profession of father, leather belting repairer. Any person shall, on presenting written requisition and on payment of a fee of sixpence, be entitled, deleted untitled, to obtain a certified, deleted expurgated copy. Tabula rasa. Falsehood of unblemished monotone, alabaster backcloth, dolly blue Sunday frock. Guild's pre-written contents clandestine embed code. Documentation, definition, delimitation. Oblique wary glance, unwitting portent of future impenetrable melancholy. Toddler plump hands folded on pious or improving book, incomprehensible to preschool eyes. Soundless prophecy of an acknowledged selflessness, of unidentified glass ceilings, of tobacco blonde xerosis cutis, of predestined self as prop. Reconstruction. Remembrances excavation, collages tobacco steeped last will and testament, true copy, with bank holiday reminiscences, wife of blank, Taylor, name undisclosed, Eroded contact precludes consent. Tragically young, no. Carrying on a business commonly known as a ticket business. Riddled with cancer, implicit. 2 children. Unelaborated veneration fishes wartime anecdotes murmured behind tepid whiskey when they think she's not listening. Unearths fragmentary ectoplasmic mosaic glued with presumption. Unfulfilled disjunt of Ivy, testatrix, and Ivy, girl. Hypostasis. Brass-framed pre-war smile, genuine. Powdered rouge skin, pageboy hair, pace necklace, floral tea dress. Pre-fragility, mental, physical. Makeshift studio's bespoke accessory, retouched, replicated. Order number 00765. Reprocessed self spectral, above generic backdrop, above packing cases, above khaki canvas, above moustached battle-dressed aloofness. 2 shillings hijacks sepia yearning, repurposes as distorted knees on a beam, as unwary collaboration, as long-distance ownership, gift wrapped as tenderness, packaged by propagandists, past unit sensor 754, cabled from the front. Appeasement. Simulacrum of officialdom shrouds sentiment in excised manila. Subtext charged greetings wired via illicit tea breaks, beholden to redacted's discretion. Formal sign-off reiterates surname, accentuates belonging. Placatory offerings to Marconi and Easton court approval via Sharrow Vale, via Indian Section Base Office, via Cairo to redacted. Message received 20th of February, 11 a.m. No enquiry respecting this telegram can be attended to without production of this copy. Privacy redacted. Emotion redacted. Soul redacted. Restitution. 9-carat adolescent pledge, scrimped weekly from apprentice wages. Lilliputian gleam battling Brobdingnagian setting, magnified, diminished in showy 18-carat replica. Promised better one of faceted quadragenarian prosperity. Fragile bands pressured to fingers shaped by unfamiliar cleavers in untrained hands, desecrated by discharge of perished innards on balding faux velvet. Princess cut touche éclat of survival's exponential surcoat. More powder, more rinses, more fox fur, more gold. Contrition's gift of reparation, preemptory or retrospective, inhumed in mottled ivory satin, crimson leatherette. Triptych. Hiatus of reclaimed vivacity's exponential contraction in glossy 2.5 by 3.5 inch monochrome. Triple frame translation under darkening skies apposite cliché. Documents decaying orbit, drags hypertensive inward spiral from seafront to campsite to backyard. Hard-won equilibriums piecemeal hijacked by premature aging, faced off with gritty panache, polka dot cotton, cultured pearls, full makeup. Extraordinary quotidian defence against obstinate frailties, inevitable linoleum and formica pull. Curriculum vitae. Broken sleep and Smith's Promolia and cotton gloves, and tea with 2 lumps, and sun blessed with golden shred and numular dermatitis, and tell our Mike he needs a haircut and consulate, and curlers in the Fox's biscuits tin, and penciled eyebrows, and hysterectomy, and vermilion lips, and max factor plume puff, and overboiled greens in the weekly news, and tell our Mike he needs a haircut and consulate, and grocery order on Wednesdays, and crossroads, and who has cancer now, and silver cream washing, wash out organ, and the Pied Piper of Hamelin, and colostomy, and washing on Thursdays, and tell our Mike he needs a haircut and consulate, and sale of the century, and Pyrex cups, and nicotine-scented leather, and nicotine-stained polystyrene, and beds on Fridays, and bells with warm water at Christmas, and tell our Mike he needs a haircut, and consulate, and angioplasty failed. Okay, this is the last one, and it's called consignation. Commencement and commandment of fractured visibility, historicised homogeneity, heaped in reliably unreliable watermarked strata, autographed by gendered malaise of indelible advantaged elan. Tutored putting into order, omission, oversight, and belief, stands abasement on fearful stagnation's creatine shoulders, Gathers guards with dead-eyed lip sync of drilled obligation. Narcotic stadium chant, nurtured, ratified by presuppositions hieroglyph cyclorama in the name of the Father. Thanks so much for listening.
Thank you, Alison. Before I'm gonna just close the event, just a couple of things, practicalities. So the two major events in November will be on 17th of November with Mona Ashi. It's gonna be a bit of a mixture of her reading from both poetry and prose, probably just a solo event with her, and then really pleased to say that Ben Israeli is gonna come up from London on the 24th of November, so that will be a solo event, and I will just try and bully her into a really long reading where she reads from essays, maybe even as well as poetry, new and old, and in the making. So that will be hopefully a beautiful event. And then there will be an Alice Notley event in December. I will let you know about closer to the time. I don't know what to do about that. It is going to be online, but we can actually make a decision collectively whether we want to get together and see it on a big screen, which might be fun, and get COVID. Sorry, and that's just a really bad joke. Or shall we just stay at home and do it from there? But we can do it. So it's the 10th hours of my work today. But that will be absolutely awesome as well. And we've got other plans. And Ansgar is here, who will be reading in February. Just a little surprise there too, already to be revealed. Really huge thank you to, let's start again, Ben Dorey, Loma Jones, Mark Lindsey, Ethel Mckellar, Vera Fibisan, and Agi Moore for accepting the invitation and giving us a little insight into what you're doing now and what you've been doing recently. So huge thank you again. Thanks. And thank you. Wherever you are. Oh, good job that they didn't hear it because I was.
Oh, look. Yeah, I really like it.
Remember when we went to Red Messy?
Hey, thank you. Of course, that's how I'm so proud of you.
We shared your group. Our crazy trip. I should do another reading go around like Edinburgh.
But I can give it to you. You give it to me first. I'm just going to quickly look this up.
I can't remember if you have that.